As you know, without wasting too much time, as you know, we've started a new segment this time at the conclave. We have an expert panel of eminence, and I think they should ask the questions. Rajiv, if you wanted to, if you could start and you could address the person directly.
Thanks, Anish, and great listening to both. Hello. Yeah, sorry. Great listening to both of you. And Raghu, thanks a lot and to Abhijit, that neither of you actually even once said that our current slowdown is attributable to the global economy, because that's really what it is not. And so I put it to you, Raghu, and then I'll ask a question to Abhijit, which is that, given that our share in global is 1.6%, our exports are 306 billion, China's are nearly 2 trillion, $1.89 trillion dollars. And the foreign trade policy is just going to be out to be announced, which again, I'm afraid, year after year, will probably announce a list of handouts, on fiscal incentives. And I've actually done the survey where the exporters, a large percentage of them say they'll rather not do those handouts because they're uncertain, they're unclear, and the transaction cost of getting them is very high. They would rather have infrastructure improvement. So you talked about competitiveness. Would you be able to be in a position to influence the foreign trade policy that it veers away from its usual annual direction that it takes and actually sort of addresses the real issues which you have already pointed out about competitiveness of the Indian industry? And to Abhijit, you sort of course, you've hinted, and very well, the governance deficit that we have today. But I think neither of you, and the question goes to really you because you've done this poverty thing, the real poverty reduction comes out of employment, creation of employment. And you know that we need 1 million new jobs every month in this country. But I'm afraid neither of you mentioned that as a problem facing our country today. What is the way forward for that, given that our manufacturing sector stagnates at 15%, our agriculture, has 50% of our population, produces, 14% of our GDP. How is employment the focus of government in this country today? I'd like to know that.
If all the questions are crisper and shorter, then the answers will also be crisper and shorter, and then we'll get that much more packed into the session. Raghu, if you would like to.
Okay, quickly. Can you hear me? No. Okay. Very quickly. First, I just want to correct something. Abhi said we're not dependent on the global economy. For sure, on net dependence on foreign trade for growth is relatively small, but we are very well integrated. 43% of our GDP is what the sum of exports and imports are. So we're not immune to what happens in the rest of the world. We do have some exposure. That said, I agree, our slowdown now cannot primarily be attributed to external factors. They are important, but I think the primary factor is domestic. That goes to the point about jobs that you mentioned. I think absolutely, and I was trying to mention it probably didn't come out clearly. Jobs are, in my view, the best form of inclusion. Can we train that person up to become a productive plumber, a productive software engineer, or something even better? But I also agree with Abhijit that in some sense I'm not disagreeing with the need for transfer programs, for welfare programs. But I think what he was trying to say, which I agree with, is they have to be very carefully targeted and they have to be efficient. We cannot, as a relatively poor country, afford poorly targeted and inefficient welfare programs. We have to make every rupee count there. And therefore, I would say we need to go more in that particular direction.
On employment, the problem with, I think, lots of people say employment. The problem is employment is an outcome. It's not an instrument. We can talk about labor laws. We could talk about skilling. We could talk about productivity improvements through other interventions, and all of those are important. I think the thing where I feel that particularly, I think if you look at the current ASER results, they should freeze our blood. I mean, the last 5 years, the proportion of people who have the most minimum skills, like children in class 5 who can do class 2 math, has declined by 10 percentage points. this should freeze our blood. I mean, we should be, I mean, if you think of, how we're going to generate employment, these guys are not going to be employable. We're going to talk about we have the youth dividend. Think of these guys, I mean, if they can't even do second grade math, what's the dividend? I think that at some level, we can't talk of employment till we have a clearer sense of skilling. And if someone asks me a question, I'll go into a rant about the right to education.
Surjit, if you'd like to ask, and I think it makes more sense if you ask one of them so that we'll get more questions in.
Actually, the question that I will end up with now, two questions, I'll be very short, but applies to both of them. First, just a factual point on Abhijit. I don't think you mean that India is undertaxed. It's certainly low compliance, but with a 17% to GDP tax ratio, we are well above what a typical country with our per capita income is. And China has 3 times our per capita income, and therefore it's at 24%. So, but I think certainly compliance is very, very low. So I think that's one. Second is Europe is overtaxed and wasted welfare expenditures, and US is undertaxed and too little welfare expenditures. So which would you prefer? Now come to the third and final question, that both of you, and you're the ideal guys to help answer this question, have a lot of experience with a lot of countries in the world. Do you come to the conclusion that India is unique in its decision making? Have you seen the kind of policies that we make and that we do not make in any other country of the world? And if so, which ones?
I think the third question is the one
I'll
that
start with the third question.
was really...
I think the country that frighteningly we look like is Brazil, 1975. So Brazil grows at 9% from 1961 to 1980, then stops growing for 20 years. Absolutely zero growth, basically, from 1980 to 2000. And Brazil is exactly us, in a sense, in that sense. Programs pile on programs, because, nothing is getting delivered, so let's have a new program. And they kept doing this, and at some point, basically, the global economy collapses, and Brazil is borrowing to do that. Brazil now can't deliver all these, they created expectations that they're going to deliver all these things, and everybody's going to get entitlements. And the biggest entitlement, let me again say one thing to emphasize, is not the entitlements of the poor, but the entitlement of the middle classes. What happened was teachers were expecting salary increases every year, which were not commensurate with the growth of the economy, but they were not expecting to do any more work for it or anything like that. And I think those entitlements we create, teachers' jobs which don't involve actually doing any work, nurses, the average attendance rate for nurses in Rajasthan, where we did a survey, was 44%. 44% of the time they were at work. 56% of the time they were somewhere else. These jobs, whatever, yeah.
I think Abhijit is pointing to the following danger. I mean, we all have programs. We talk about programs for Aam Aadmi. For our foreign visitors, that means the ordinary person. So I went around the office the other day asking, who is Aam Aadmi? And the best answer I got was, Aam Aadmi is me. So that's the danger of the kind of policies which focus on, which are poorly targeted, which focus on the middle class, which tend to spend a lot of money in the wrong ways. And then the scare story is of Brazil. But Surjit, you asked, are we unique? I think we are. Because we are one of the few countries that is trying to grow out of poverty with democracy and has at least made a go of it so far. I think it's useful to use Brazil as a scare story. I don't think we're there. I don't think we should get there, because I think Brazil did not have democracy when it went through this period of slow growth. I think democracy creates self-correcting impulses. And hopefully, as we veer off track, which we did perhaps over the last couple of years in terms of growth, we've also had the self-correction come from the democratic process, and we will get back on track.
Rajat? We're running out of time, Surjit. Rajat, please.
Thanks, Abhijit and Raghu. It was great listening to your wonderful diagnosis. I have a question to both, or it's in the nature of both a question as well as a comment, and both of them kind of hinted, and Abhijit talked about it a little more, is the governance deficit and the need to actually put our own house in order, and a lot of structural changes that Raghu mentioned. And even in the previous session, President Kalam mentioned that the rule of law has not delivered what it had promised. So my question is, given that it was so difficult creating economic regulatory institutions, even in the West, even in mature democracies where institutions are relatively easier to create, for us, low income, moving to middle income, creating these economic regulatory institutions to ensure that the trickle down happens. And Raghu has written a lot about crony capitalism. The benefits of growth have been kind of restricted to a few. Will we just have to accept this regulatory or governance deficit and muddle through, or is there something more that can be done?
Raghu?
Well, I think I think what happened in our period of strong growth is we outran our institutions. I think there is catch-up going on. Some of our institutions said, hey, wait a minute, you didn't create the right processes. The CAG, the Supreme Court intervened. And I think we're in the process of looking at that and saying, okay, how do we recreate that? So I think, you should see the cup as half full, that some of our institutions worked and are helping reform the structure so that we adapt to the kind of growth that we had and make that growth more supportive with better institutions.
One last question, Ajay, please. You can ask Abhijit.
Farmers come last, and the question is very simple. Both of you have talked of growth, and it's been absolutely not equal for farmers in India. We have missed the growth story. 50% of people are involved in farming, and for most of them it is unprofitable. Do you think removing farm subsidies will give equitable growth to more than half of India? Because you have consistently talked about capping farm subsidies. Do you think capping farm subsidies will make farming a profitable profession for 50% of India? Because that's creating jobs on the farm.
Raghu?
I think the longer run solution cannot be keep subsidizing farming. I think it has to be to make farming more profitable for the people remaining in farming. And that's why I think part of the answer has to be what I think Rajiv talked about earlier, get more jobs outside of farming for the people in farming, so you leave fewer people who can use more land and therefore make a better go of it. One of the factors that you must have noted is the increasing fractionalization of farms, which is part of the reason for unprofitability. They're getting smaller and smaller. How do you make it such that a farmer can earn a decent living? Sure, there might be subsidies going forward, but what you want to do is make sure that farming itself is a more productive occupation. How can you create more productivity in farming? That should be our focus.
Abhijit, if you'd like to add quickly.
I think if we want to subsidize farming, we should stop doing it the way we do it, which is through using water subsidies. It's a disastrous way to subsidize because the water table is falling. Punjab is in crisis and many other places will be soon. And fertilizer subsidies. I mean, those are just the worst places to subsidize. We're distorting the environment. We're distorting all the resources, scarce resources. We want to subsidize them. Let's just give them money. It's much easier than doing all this loony stuff.
Thank you.
Sir, no,
we'll have to close.
Sir,
I'm sorry.
I need to say this because I definitely disagree with it. As far as fragmentation of landholding is coming, Mr. Jairam Ramesh has given a statement that landholdings are very large in India today, and we need to fragment them further. And so that's what you have to go along with it when you make policies. And farming needs to be profitable. It does not have to be through farm subsidies or fertilizer subsidies. But first you have to make it profitable, and then you can talk about removing these subsidies. You cannot say we'll remove subsidies, make farming profitable, and move people out of the farming sector.
We could carry on, but time is of the essence, and we have a timetable to keep. I'd like to thank both the panelists, Raghu and Abhijit, and thank you so much.
Can I request Mr. Puri to please come on stage and give a token of appreciation to the speakers? Can I please request both of you to stay on for just a minute?